Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the education track of Charcha 2020, co-hosted by Central Square Foundation and Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. The new normal, as it is being called, is not normal at all for our school children. Their schools are closed, teacher interactions are virtual, friends are being missed, and there is a lot of uncertainty around exams and college admissions. Impact on millions of children studying in government and budget private schools is even worse. As education goes online, children from low-income families face the challenges of no to shared devices, low internet connectivity, and constrained physical spaces for learning. But we've also seen rapid response from many others in the wake of this crisis. Haryana, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, and Jharkhand are some of the states that were already working towards transformation. They've swiftly directed their teachers to form WhatsApp groups to help parents and students transition, and are supporting their schools with daily calendars mapped to student learning competencies, guidelines for structured one-on-one weekly phone interactions between students and teachers. Recognizing that home digital access is often limited, some states like Uttar Pradesh are also adding other mediums like TV and radio. Some interesting examples of content companies in this space have been simply inspirational. Avanti, a social enterprise, launched a free learning app, Avanti Sankalp, for Hindi medium government students in classes 9 to 12. Pratham and many other NGOs have made their entire content libraries available for public use, and it is being used extensively across many states. There is a need for more. There is a need for continued collaborative response from the entire sector to ensure Ghar Pe School becomes a better normal for our children. How do we prepare our teachers and schools in government and budget private schools for this transition? What role will parents and communities play? How can we be more proactive on ensuring emotional well-being of children? Will budget private schools be able to deal with the economic shock of this crisis? How do we collaborate extensively as education ecosystem stakeholders? And is there an opportunity for the education sector in this crisis? These are some of the questions that we will deliberate upon throughout the day. It is a pleasure to kick off these conversations with two industry experts, Dr. Rukmini Banerji, CEO Pratham Foundation, and Ashish Dhawan, Founder Chairman, Central Square Foundation. My speakers and their contributions and commitment to the education sector needs no introduction. So let me jump in with them with my questions, and we'll leave 10 minutes at the end for attendee Q&A. Ashish, Rukmini, thank you very much for joining us today. Let me kick off the session by asking you to share your observations in the education sector in the last 2 months. What worries you and what excites you about this response?
Rukmini, why don't you go ahead?
Ashish, you are A, so you should lead.
That's the way, Rukmini.
Okay, I'll start. Clearly the last 2 months have been very challenging for everyone. We know with regards to low-income families, there are beyond school education, there's so many issues they're having to deal with in terms of employment, challenges at home, migration, etc. And just the feeling of insecurity given the collapse in the economy. I think with regards to children in particular, we know that there is the regular summer slide, which is there's a learning loss over the course of the summer. This is an extended period of time out of school. And I think what's very, very clear, we all know that household effects are extremely important. I think this crisis has brought to light that fact that, when there is no schooling, you're back at home. And, in upper income households, children are doing Zoom classes and their parents have more time and parents are spending time with them and they're doing other activities, etc. And in low income households, they're having to deal with insecurity, scrambling for food. There's no technology. There's mental health issues across the spectrum. But there's no parental involvement or minimal parental involvement with learning. So the inequity that we had is only going to increase even further. And as we know from the literature, some of these learning losses are permanent or show up in later years. So that's, I think, the the gravity of the situation. The flip side is, in a crisis, there's always an opportunity. And I think the opportunity is, one is, we never really thought about, household effects and can you really have an impact on the home? What is, from a learning standpoint, are there interventions, that can be effective? And I know there's small experiments being done right now, but I think we can think about that more systematically or going forward. Second is, there's minimal sort of connection between the school and parents and the home. And I think now teachers are forced to reach out to students at home, to parents. I think that information link isn't there, parental involvement isn't there, there's an opportunity to look at that. I think for the system itself, there's a chance to now look at more partners because they're going to scramble as they get children back to school. Working with NGO partners, viewing them as collaborators as opposed to people on the side who are doing things in their system. And then innovation. I think teacher training we know is broken because of the cascade model. Can we look at more hybrid approaches to doing it? Innovative approaches in terms of children using EdTech or self-learning as well. There are, of course, issues around the budget private schools, which are very severe, and we can talk about that later. And I think the way we've had sort of a credit guarantee for SMEs, I think we need to look at something similar, or it needs to be applied to budget schools. And there are probably some other reforms that can be done at this point in time. So I think we need to look at this comprehensively to see what we can gain from this crisis as well.
Thanks, Ashish. And we'll listen to you, and there are many experts coming up later today to delve on those issues. Thank you.
Sure.
It's now hard to find new things to say because almost anything you want to say has already been said in some webinar or the other. And just yesterday on this same platform, there was someone from Bangalore. And Ashish, I don't know if you agree with me, but वो Bangalore वाले ना बहुत अच्छा words use करते हैं. So I'm going to steal some of the Bangalore people's words because we Delhi people are not so good with words. We are good with action. To say that, it's been a very dramatic, damaging, defining period and so on. But at a personal level and at a pratham level, हमें ऐसे लगता है कि हम एक seesaw पे बैठे हैं. The downside of the seesaw is exactly what Ashish said. There is a big hit to families, to systems, to life, depending on what kind of family you're talking about. वहाँ पे definitely, there's all kinds of hardship and scarcity of the type that perhaps उतना नहीं था पहले, but now much more. But on the upside of the seesaw is this, a whole set of amazing things that are happening and unfolding in front of our eyes. And I want to give a few examples of that as Pratham, we work in about, half of our education work is directly in communities in schools, and about half is in partnership with governments. That's how we've operated across all the age ranges. And in the direct work, obviously there is some Pratham person who knows children on the ground. We usually have a formula of about 5 to 10 villages being handled by one person. And so within about, a week of the lockdown, we were hearing things about how people were reaching out. And that reaching out, I think, is a completely human feature. कि सब लोग ठीक हैं कि नहीं, आप कहाँ पे हो, घर में सब कोई ठीक है कि नहीं, kind of effort, which was being done spontaneously across. And when you do that spontaneously across, and you do it on, we're working in about 6,000 villages, you then realize that if I'm not there, and you have to move in your head from I'm there all the time to I'm far away, but exactly like you do with your own kids and your own family, you start looking at the structures within which all this are. So we know कि ये मेरा गांव है, गांव में मैं 4 लोगों को जानती हूँ. In our normal work, we work inside the school in the morning, and we have children's groups by neighborhood in the afternoon. So मेरा neighborhood के साथ एक connect था. So there is a village, there is a hamlet. Within the hamlet, there are groups, and within the groups, there are children and households. And so, in a very organic way, people started reaching out to these different layers and realized that what you need in this time, and especially us who don't know much other than education and are far away, कि बच्चों को engaged रखने के लिए, बच्चों को, actually थोड़ा सा मस्ती, थोड़ा सा पढ़ाई is what we are calling what we are doing. And I think that is necessary because at this point, पढ़ाई तो हो जाएगी, but अभी at least being engaged and being familiar with this medium was very important. quickly we realized also that if I want to reach, because people started going down lists कि इस बच्चे के साथ तो मेरा contact हो गया, but उनके group में तो 4 और थे, तो वो कहाँ हैं? And we realized that much of what we were doing until then was one based on the social structures that we were very close to on the one hand, and on the other hand there was the digital content जो हमारे digital teams have been using and making, which can then go through smartphones. But if I want to reach the last boy in my group and I know him by name and I know him by I know him, तो फिर smartphone तो नहीं चलेगा. And therefore we started figuring out, and clearly all the old basic phones came in. I've had a team in Uttarakhand actually lay out week by week कि किसके पास कहाँ तक पहुँचे, and it's almost like a serial. I feel उसकी ना every week the dynamic was changing, because as parents began to realize कि कोई फायदे की चीज आ रही है फोन से, then they began to enable कि चाचा जी का फोन थोड़ी देर के लिए ले लिया, फलाने का थोड़ा देर के लिए ले लिया. So we found that the two-way communication of sending things and then following up by phone, which I think a lot of people are doing now, is extremely important, because just वो ऊपर से आता है, where does it land and is it landing in the right place? There were areas in which कोई communication नहीं हो रहा था, तो हमारे लोगों ने बहुत फोन करके पूछा, and they realized कि वो फोन नंबर तो चाचा के पास है और चाचा तो अभी दूसरे गांव में चला गया है, so it is not reaching. So I think that the two things that we have learned is, one, the objective कि I have to reach all my children is really important. That drives a lot of the content behind it. Second is कि वो पहुंचा कि नहीं मुझे पता करना है. And thirdly, पहुंचने के बाद कौन क्या कर रहा है and how is that evolving over time. Actually, Ashish, we see a lot of engagement from the basic phone ke parents, because I think that unke liye, and also, you are limited by what you can send in your 167 characters or 67 characters, depending on how many SMSs you're able to send. We had to economize to send, हर एक के पास 100 SMS free में भेजने का pack है, तो उसको हम कैसे करें? We are seeing that people are not able to recharge their smartphones, or they're not getting the data plan that they had before. So one is that we have benefited hugely from the social structures that we had in place. जहाँ पे वो social structures नहीं थे, जहाँ पे हमारे relationships नहीं थे, in this time making a new relationship is difficult because आप दूर हो. Secondly, जो digital content हमारे पास था, it was very useful because you started with that. But as you moved ahead, you could see that you needed to widen, and you often needed to go back to old things. SMS, radio, missed call. Our own technology work was moving in the direction of moving forward. And now we can see there's been a huge spread across the board in, moving sideways. And a third thing was, I think that, we are well known for saying teaching at the right level, because that's what children need. We have a huge need for learning at the right level, because what is coming back to us, I am really, one of the things that's driving me crazy these days is that I'm not able to absorb everything that is happening and being able to make sense of it and move on. But certainly parents who we thought were not capable or we did not make an effort, we meaning the school system does not make an effort, we see plenty of evidence of that happening. We've had some, for example, we send out some things in our early childhood program, which happen to have father in it. One of our heads of our early childhood program is a male, and उसने अपने बच्चे के साथ छोटा सा वीडियो बना के डाल दिया. The videos we are getting back all have fathers in it. And so, I think that the availability of the family at home has really expanded this possibility of family projects. And one of the things that for the last couple of years we've been working on is to say that school mein kaam hona chahiye, but community mein kaam honi chahiye. We see a big expansion of opportunity for that happening. On the partnership side, just like Prachi has said, I think the spaces for collaboration have really opened up. And, many people are reaching out to each other, sharing things that they have. I think governments who otherwise take time in, getting into a collaborative mode have realized that this is not the time to have, walls. This is the time to kind of open up and get in there. So this is the upside. And I think that the real challenge will be how much of this upside can we take forward and mediate with the downside. I mean, this whole period coming up ahead, I think we may be underestimating what the economic and associated hit is that is already happening and going to happen more. And so how can that balance the down so that the seesaw is not so up and down, but gets into some kind of a more even mode?
Rukmini, I mean, some of this initial response has been heartening on all of those fronts, right? So, and you know, some of the numbers which are coming out are also very positive. So, for example, when Himachal Pradesh launched its WhatsApp-based program to connect all the teachers to the students, we were thinking we'll get numbers, and these are government schools. We thought we'll get numbers like 20-30% have been reached through these. The numbers are upwards of 50% of the students have been reached through teacher-formed WhatsApp groups. And in senior grades, it is 90%. 90%.
No, and if you go to pre-primary, we are completely involved in the pre-primary. I would say it is, closer to everyone, because they have 3,500 pre-primary classes, which have been very well supported by the government for the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
It's that social network of connections between the officers at the school and the parents, जो पहले से था, उसका बहुत फायदा अभी दिख रहा है, because making new connections takes long.
Exactly, and those two things, I think that what was there, is being leveraged. This was not done overnight. 35-40% of the teachers actually already had those WhatsApp groups, and it's WhatsApp, the text, and other examples that you were giving, Rukmini, which is very much the familiar platforms versus now asking them to download this brand new app and get trained and all of that, and the two-way communication and excitement that's happening on them. Like a Pratham activity goes, stick the pearls, make this flower, and suddenly 100 photos come back. Bright flowers of children having done that activity. But at the same time, I feel that, this is a good response, it's a strong response, but it has adjusted for what we have, Ashish, as the currently available infrastructure, right? And that's the big question that keeps coming back to the table, that how can we overcome this infra hurdle? How much of our attention needs to go there to really address access for online education across the spectrum?
Yeah, so Prachi, we know that access to online education in school is limited. The ICT at Schools program has been targeted more at secondary schools and some middle schools that are integrated. And there are a large number are non-functional. And so the B2B side, at least on the government school side, I think there's an opportunity there. I mean, most middle-income countries, lower middle-income countries like India, as they go into middle income, actually invest quite a bit in digital in schools. China invests about 8% of its school education budget on digital. So I think there's an opportunity there going forward. And for smaller children, it could be a tab with learning tools on it that they use for 3 or 4 years. So devices could vary depending on the age group of kids. So I think there's, of course, the technology infrastructure and all the other stuff around it. It's not just the hardware, but pedagogically sound software that's on it, the assessment, involving the teachers, the parents, sort of holistically looking at it versus just looking at it as a piece of hardware, which we know doesn't work, because countries have tried that. But I would say we need to look beyond tech as well. I mean, I think in the here and now, the response, as you said, needs to be a combination of different approaches. There's obviously mass media, TV, broadcast TV. I don't think the evidence is that strong that it works very well. It's very passive. Interactive radio, I think there's evidence from 15, 20 years ago that it actually is very, very powerful medium and has shown results. We are not leveraging it to the extent we could right now. There's obviously independent student work that they could do. If schools don't open on time, we could send them work to do independently, non-tech. There's low tech that we've talked about, Rukmini also alluded to. So I think there's a combination. Smartphone, clearly, we know penetration of smartphones is reasonably high. When you look at it, I think a lot of people look at smartphone penetration at the individual level, where it may be 35%. But when you get down to the household level, it's about 2/3 of households would have a smartphone, because it'll be one individual or maybe two, the father and mother, who have a device. Or as Rukmini said, maybe a chacha or tau or someone. So, but I think for the moment, the COVID response, we can't rely just on smartphones. I think we need to think more holistically and look at other media. I think going forward, as smartphone penetration increases, my own sense is that's going to be the most powerful device. B2C, it's probably a bigger opportunity. But having said that, the school system also does need to think through its own strategy of how it integrates technology, but doing it the right way. Because technology for the sake of technology will be a complete failure.
Agree. And taking a cue from that that Rukmini also alluded to earlier, that now the parents are involved, in a way, because teachers have made the effort. They've sent videos, they formed WhatsApp group with teachers. They're reaching out actively. Some two-way communication has started. So one is, what do we continue to do on that front in the wake of COVID and lockdowns and opening and reopening of schools. But Rukmini, to the point that you made, that how do we actually sort of sustain the benefits of direct connection, of parent involvement, of home effects, longer through our education system? How can we continue with some of these positive interventions which have come in?
Before answering your question, I just want to add to what Ashish is saying, that I think that this is time to think a little bit comprehensively for the village or the community. Education ki needs hain for connecting, but I think health ki needs isse bhi zyada hain. There is need for information back and forth, and perhaps there needs to be a national view of, now, for example, so many districts have, video conferencing facilities which are done routinely from the state capital. I think panchayat conferencing facilities are also there in some places, but there needs to be, every village needs to be connected in a two-way mechanism, because we are going to need this for many reasons. If we are concerned about education, I've not been on any of the health panels, but clearly the health crisis is right here, even more on a daily basis. I'm from Bihar. I'm very concerned about what is going to happen now jab sab log ghar pahunch rahe hain. And with it, they are bringing experience, but they are bringing all kinds of other things as well. So is there a plan, a national plan of connecting every habitation to the wider world, to the district, to the block, or whatever, and on which many things can flow? And can that location of this connectivity be the school, which then brings the school at the center of the community as a place where things are known, where knowledge can be disseminated and communication can happen? So I do think we need to think about that. We should have thought about it, long ago, but theek hai, nahi socha tha tab, to is that possible? And that will also, if resources are going to be spent on this, it will conserve everyone's resources and potentially have a way in which it can be collectively perhaps supported. But coming back to what the question that you asked me, I think that, in many ways, it's sort of like the school as it was is now a frozen picture, right? Jaise hum logon ka jab internet chala jata hai and Zoom, then you're frozen exactly as you were. And then when you come back, is it going to be just me, or is it going to be something, a picture which is better and different? And I think in completely fundamental ways, the key elements, and we are talking about education today, but probably it's true everywhere else, why we are doing what we are doing, when we are doing it, who is doing it, how we are doing it, where we are doing it, all is likely to change. And it's not like, history started, on March 24th. We had a whole set of things in the past that we have, and lots of people have been talking about, usme kya change lani chahiye. But I think the convenient thing, and I've been saying this, I'm going to just repeat myself, that we have a nice Rakshas now to blame everything on. There is, COVID ke wajah se XYZ ho gaya. We don't worry about wo pehle se kyun ho raha tha. Abhi ek aa gaya Rakshas, to usi ko blame kar do na sab kuch. And then let us recreate and move forward. And, this having some other villain is not a bad thing, because maybe there were many reasons why we were where we were. But now we can move ahead in some new way. So I think that the why, and I'm just going down the list a little bit, because, in our own planning in Pratham, we've been, really thinking about this. We were also, and we are probably the ones, the villains of the piece of saying ki learning honi chahiye. Now, hum hi usko bhugot rahe hain. Reading and math nahi tha, iske wajah se, huge programs that we are running. But today when schools open, whenever they open, we should be ready for the fact that ensuring schooling and attendance is going to be really important. And it is likely that government schools mein enrollment बढ़ जाएंगे, because parents may not be able to afford in other places. It is likely that teachers हमारे ना शहर से आते हैं अक्सर, तो वो शायद daily नहीं आ पाएंगे. So this ensuring that सब लोग school आएं, particularly from the vulnerable, is going to be a very important thing for everybody in education. There are particular groups, जैसे बड़ी लड़कियां हैं, who we have worked very hard as a country to make sure that today's 8th standard is practically everybody who started school reaches 8th. We don't want that to be lost because अब बड़ी लड़कियों को घर में रखना पड़ेगा while mom goes out to Narega or whatever. So I think that even our own focus of ensuring regular functioning of whatever is going to widen. When the centralized way of school in Madhya Pradesh will open on the 1st of July cannot happen. कहीं पे green होगा, कहीं पे orange होगा, कहीं पे red होगा. I think this is going to force decentralized decision making simply because of the halat that is there. We are used to continuity कि chapter 1 से लेके chapter 18 तक चलेंगे और वो उसको थोड़ा हल्का कर देंगे because this is a very strange year. But I think we have to get out of that mentality to say right now also we are sending pieces out. And so what is the new sequencing of effective pieces that are going to work? Who is going to teach? I think there is going to be on the one hand real strain on the regular people who taught because of larger enrollment, distance, and so on. But there is likely to be availability of a lot more people who are not your traditional teachers, who from time to time can come in to help. So another big policy issue that I think needs to be tackled is under Narega, kaun kya kar sakega? Old Narega mein you could only do certain things, asset creation. But I think these 250 million little assets that we have, massive asset creation needs to be done for them. Because you don't want this crisis to then jeopardize the next 25 years and you're not going to have extra money within the system to do this. So you have to optimize with what you have. Migrants coming back is seen as a problem. I think it could be turned around to say every migrant brings with him a lot of lived experience that could potentially be used. And where will this happen? I think there's going to be a continuum of ghar mein, mohalle mein, school mein, and you're going to be in each one of these places at any time. So our head, when our screen unfreezes, should have this, much more variegated picture, but still a consistent and an aligned one. And I frankly feel that somebody was asking me, "Is saal aap asar karoge?" And I said, this is not the year for looking at outcomes. This is the year for stabilizing. This is the year for stepping back. This is the year for reconnecting. And yes, maybe somebody can come up with metrics for all of those, but I think that we need to settle down. We need to help children catch up. Ashish is absolutely right. Studies that have been done on disaster and its effect on learning shows that school may be closed for 2 months, you go back 1 year or more. And so I pray to the gods of the education establishment in India to say, आप learning outcome को curricular base का जो है उसको थोड़ा अलग रख दो. Work hard to help figure out where every child is, and work hard to bring them back onto a common foundational platform. At the same time, children have learned a lot during this time. They may not have learned, 1.1.1, but they've learned how to deal with many things. And therefore, let us spend some time in learning from them what they have learned, because I think that there's been a big learning for life that has gone on in this field.
Rukmini, how do we build on so many of these learnings which are coming from, what you are sharing, what, is happening in some of the other work, right? So for example, like the nudges that you're seeing, which are working for online learning, the nudges which are helping, teachers become more effective, those groups become much more engaged than others. Many people are putting content out, but which content is working, which is not. Yesterday there was a meeting in Rajasthan where 3,000 of their officers actually joined in over a Zoom call to discuss, what's the situation on the ground over there. So, there are all these examples coming in patches, some good and some which are learnings which can advance the sector. How do we collaborate more effectively in a structured fashion that we are able to, during this time, really, turn this on its face and move to a much stronger position than from where we started?
So very quickly, I think right now there is huge amounts of sort of this piece-wise content out there in different stages of delivery. Koi asman se utar raha hai, koi side se aa raha hai, koi kuch ho raha hai. I think a big effort by everybody who is involved in sending these has to be put down to understanding when it lands on the ground, wo hota kya hai, right? So I'll give you an example, and I think you're familiar with some of our SMS messages. 2 weeks ago, in the same week, we had one little SMS message which said, आपके घर में पानी का कितना इस्तेमाल होता है? आप बाल्टी में measure कर सकते हो, मग में measure कर सकते हो, धोने के लिए कितना, रसोई के लिए कितना, बताओ. And we had a much more academic one, कि number के cards बनाओ और उनसे बड़े number और छोटे number बनाओ. Now the calls that we were making to investigate this we got many more questions on the balti wala question from different people in the family, including parents saying कि आज ना हमारा पानी का खर्चा थोड़ा बढ़ गया था क्योंकि आज हमने कपड़े धोए पर 2 दिन में हम कपड़े नहीं धोएंगे तो उस दिन कट जाएगा तो मेरा बच्चा उसको कैसे बताए, right? Now what we are learning is obviously some of the more traditional number recognition type activities need to be done. But if you put in these kind of more engaging activities, a lot more people participate, and it's probably likely that it's not कि बच्चा homework कर रहा है उसको चुपचाप बैठा दो वो करे, but मुझे भी सोचना है क्योंकि जो काम आया है वो मेरे लिए भी है. So today, because it's going in pieces, it's actually easier in a way to cull these out. When it's 1 to 18 and homework every day and सुबह से रात तक आप कुछ करो तो वो बहुत मुश्किल है. Even in middle class families, I see the attention with which mom is saying कि वो vertebrae वाला homework हो गया. Earlier should have said homework हो गया. Yeah. So I think we need to ride on this and learn what is. I mean, I'm not saying that every activity needs to be super engaging, but what's the mix? If I want parents to kind of be, we've gotten all parents, whether uneducated or educated, onto one big step forward. Don't go back. And Land Pritchett, who's a fantastic guy, and for many reasons, but also has very evocative phrases, talks about this thing called isomorphic mimicry. कि बाहर से देखने में वो same है, अंदर कुछ नहीं है. Okay, so let us guard against the fact कि मेरा school खुल गया, कि वो घंटी बज रही है, दरवाजे खुल गए, लोग आ रहे हैं. To saying कि schooling or learning is not a place, it's an actual activity. तो वो activity का बदलाव कैसे आया? Across the board, and again, I don't know who's listening, schools should open with a big welcome to parents to say कि आपने हमारी जान बचाई. You are central in this picture. ये हमारे स्कूलों ने कभी नहीं किया. And yet today, across the board, schools are going to need parents more. वो budget private school हो, वो सरकारी school हो, वो वसंत वाली school हो, you are going to need your parents. So welcome them in and start discussion as well to say कि आप क्या मदद कर सकते हो.
Absolutely.
Not only fees. आपने जो अपने दिल से, अपने दिमाग से, अपने हाथ से मदद की, वो बहुत जरूरी था. And उसको हमें चाहिए और भी चाहिए होगा.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ashish, now just turning and going piece by piece on this for different age groups, specifically for foundational learning, what, do you think online education is an effective medium? Parents' role over there is much more important. What are some of the innovations that you are seeing which can make it even more effective for those age groups? And maybe across age groups also, right? I mean, there is different kinds of stress that different age groups are facing. So as we talk about our senior kids and kids who are ready to go to college, how do we ensure the emotional well-being of our?
Yeah, so I think with foundational learning, obviously the teacher plays a very important role, and I don't want to undermine school at all. We know the parents also, household, children learn everywhere. I mean, not just at school. So obviously they're learning from life's experiences, as Rukmini said, and ऐसा नहीं है कि school में नहीं है तो पढ़ाई, I mean, they're not learning. Traditional पढ़ाई नहीं हो रही, but they are learning. I think in terms of the more traditional stuff, the basic numeracy and literacy, I do believe that education technology does hold some promise. I mean, if you look in low-income countries, structured pedagogy tends to work well, even in the classroom. And if you look at a lot of the pedagogically sound tools, they're actually quite structured in their approach, building on the ladder of early literacy or early numeracy. So for instance, there was this X Prize that was funded by Elon Musk, Global X Prize, where about 300 participants, 300 orgs participated, and there were 5 finalists. And eventually these were rolled out in Tanzania in Swahili for children to learn on their own. And the finalist was a product called KitKit. And interestingly, over the course of a year, the child on a device spent 258 hours, the average child. And learning levels went up dramatically because they went up this ladder of literacy and numeracy, on their own. And many of these children actually weren't attending school. Some were. And so you could even look at the effects across both those groups. And then there were the other finalists who also were evaluated. So we chose to work with 2 of them. One Indian org called Chimple, which then translated its product into Hindi through a grant we'd given them. And what we're finding as we're rolling out Chimple through an app called Top Parent, is that Top Parent is an app that CSF had developed with an entrepreneur, Shashwati, who had run Sesame Workshop in India. Is really, we felt in the early years, engaging the parent is important. So what this app does is, it really engages the parent. It has content on health and hygiene, safety for their children, emotional well-being, but also making them aware that it's important for them to focus on numeracy and literacy. And then underlying it are some learning apps, Chimple, KitKit, and Bolo. And what we found is with Chimple, the child is spending actually 20 minutes per session. So unlike a product for high school children where they tend to go for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes in a home context, children are actually very engaged. With the KitKit product that we call Math Masti in India, so far it's 28 minutes is the session time. So I think there is a way to engage children. If you can get the parent involved, children will stay engaged and they'll actually move up this ladder of literacy and numeracy. So I think there's some hope there. Interestingly, we worked with Google.org and developed a product called Tic Tac Learn, which is a series of videos. And now we're developing assessments and items. And it's the largest bank of videos in Hindi and 5 other languages. The Hindi YouTube channel was launched just, I think, a month ago. And without spending a rupee, we have about 5+ million video views already. And states are starting to endorse it. So I think in the upper grades, of course, there are lots of issues with mental health and emotional well-being. But I think these children are able to access certain resources as well from a learning standpoint. But I'm more familiar with the early grades, so I can speak more confidently about that.
Ashish, let me also get your thoughts on 2 diverse areas, and then let's open it up for questions. I can see them pouring in by the second. So one is on the role of philanthropy in all of this, specifically for education. Do you think we need new funding models for better impact and efficiency in all of what we are talking about right now? And the second topic, which you had, second question on the topic that you had also alluded to, that, is there an opportunity for fundamental reforms in the education sector, the way we are talking about, MSME, land and labor reforms, and many other sectors? What about education? Do we need some reforms there, especially for budget private schools, which are reeling under the pressure of enrollment fees, innovating very little resources? Let me get your quick responses on those 2, and then we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, I think on the funding models, there may be 2-3 opportunities. One is, as we were saying earlier, Rukmini also brought it up. Are there, there's very little funding around trying to go into the home and improve household effects, or in building the connection between the parent and the school. And of course, the parent getting more involved with their child. So I think clearly looking at, we know from the Coleman study back in the 60s that household effects may be more important than school effects, even though the purpose of going to school really is to normalize for those the discrepancy or the inequity in household effects. So I think one is that, let's focus on that connection with the parents, with the community. Let's see if we can actually influence that, as opposed to just narrowly focusing on what's going on within the boundary walls of the school. Because learning is happening much beyond the boundary walls of the school, and parental role is critical. I think a second one is around innovation. I think there are new ways of doing things. We were talking about them earlier. And this opens up a window. I think what we're doing right now is fairly chaotic. But what secretly you're doing is building some of the infrastructure. So whilst I don't know if the WhatsApp stuff between teachers is leading to much right now, but that infrastructure is getting built. Or the Diksha is a platform where the learning resources behind it may not be great today, but it's an infrastructure platform where you have an energized textbook, 500 million textbooks that have been rolled out with QR codes. Or you have this now communication channel with the parents. And you're at least getting their mobile numbers, and you have them on WhatsApp. You can message them. You can do IVRS stuff with them. Find text messaging ways to engage them. So those platforms or those infrastructure is getting built. Thinking about how we can fund innovation around that to now do it in a more methodical way, I think is an innovative way of doing things. And a third one is, as we were saying earlier, the system's going to need help. Rukmini also alluded to it. They will want more partnership. I think we need more innovative funding around, as opposed to an NGO just running its program. can the NGOs that are working in a state that have a lot of history and have done great work actually become partners, and philanthropists and funders actually fund that work, which is often more technical work, system capacity work, often with the NGOs themselves playing a key role. So it's not just governance work, but actually changing some of the classroom transaction as well, which we know the NGO partners are excellent at, and they can help the states in making that happen. I think in terms of the budget private schools, it's a moment to really think about what we can do for them. I think, frankly, we should put it back on the table. I know I won't be popular for saying this, that should it be made for profit? I know there's this ideological issue around not-for-profit in education, but let's face it, they all run for profit. So why not? If the purpose of GST was to convert more informal into formal, why not do that with schooling as well? It'll allow for more credit to flow in. It'll allow for a different class of entrepreneurs to come in. And let's get the regulatory state off the back of these entrepreneurs, because the license Raj does operate here. I do think for this sector, maybe some relaxation of norms, saying, look, let's give them a free pass from some norms for 5 years. And then we'll hold them accountable to some tough norms around learning. And of course, they need to meet some basic safety norms, some basic norms for sure. But let's get them a little bit of free pass in terms of the draconian regulation that they face. And second, let's give them some support. This credit support, 4 years, 1 year moratorium, it's being given to MSMEs. Why not extend that to schools? I haven't looked at the RBI circular to see what's included, but I think some support there, because we know they're going to face a liquidity crunch, solvency crunch as well. So I think this is an opportunity to support these schools with credit and also really give them a free pass from the regulatory state and open up these norms. I potentially look at some states already allow corporatization of private schools, look at that more widely, look at this issue of for-profit, but also ask the question around greater transparency. How do we quality assure? Do we need a learning marker eventually in 3rd grade or 5th grade, not just at the board exam, so we know how schools are performing? Because if the information asymmetry were to be bridged, parents would be able to make better decisions, but you'd also be able to hold these schools accountable. So I think there are many things that can come onto the table now. Some of these are included in the new education policy as well.
Excellent. This has been really, really insightful, almost a blueprint for how we can go from here.
Actually, I wanted to add something on this before you open up to questions. And I'm glad, we are doing this Charcha 2020. It should actually be called Kharcha 2020, because that's really what we are going to need to optimize. As I said earlier, paise honge, sarkar ke paas kam paise honge, but we don't have resources. And I just want to point to the fact that, in the last 20 years, we have had, as I think everyone knows, a whole series of randomized evaluations on, stuff that Pratham has done. Every single study shows the community volunteer coming out significant and adding to the learning of children. Now, in case anybody wants evidence, to me, often it looks like in India, evidence is used just as like a, burqa, and then you do whatever you want otherwise. This is a very strong signal of evidence from our own context that community contribution makes a big difference. How do we take, so we and Pratham obviously take that very seriously, which is why we work in both places. I think it's important to think that in the landscape that is evolving, where you will have a lot of young people around in the village who you're not going to be able to provide jobs. We should just accept that. We couldn't do it before, so ab to ho hi nahi sakega. But there is work, there are schemes, and therefore, how do you engage, whatever kind of school, how can you modify, even for the next 1 year, a Narega type scheme to allow this foundational learning at least. I'm not talking about other subjects. How do you allow foundational learning to be helped by young people who are around, young or old people who are around, to support it in this, because there is a slide back, the things were not to begin with. And so I think that at a national level, and I think that's linked to what's the goal for 2020. When schools open, what does India want to achieve? Where if we were having this conversation in 2021 on the 15th of May, would it be the same old stuff, or would we have accomplished something in this 1 year? The new education policy has not rolled out. The education policy is probably first goal should be the first or second chapter that they had. To say, get the foundation in place, stop everything else. If you do that, you will accelerate much faster. So I think that all of this has to be premeditated on what's the goal at the national level, what's the goal for my village, what's the goal for my community. And if my goal is get schools back up and running with everybody coming and ensure that every child by grade 3 or grade 5 can read and do basic math, then rework everything, online, offline, top line, bottom line, everything to be able to support that. And I think that even coming out of the education sessions in this charcha, without increasing kharcha, bring out a headline which says, ki as India, we need to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Prachi, just 1 second, I'll add. I think Rukmini makes a very important point that this is an opportune moment to launch the foundational learning mission because the inequity has increased. It's brought into focus where learning is breaking down and define the goals and really take this nationwide. But as Rukmini said, I think this idea of getting someone from the community, maybe if not in every school, but at the Gram Panchayat village, we have 250,000 Gram Panchayats. One person from the community from every Gram Panchayat to interface with the parents. So to get them more involved, let's leverage this moment to do it more systematically, but also to assist, in the school, to get the community involved, but also to play a role in assisting the teacher in the school. I think there's a golden opportunity there.
Absolutely. And Ashish and Rukmini, I would say, why just foundational learning? NCF 2005 is being revisited, particularly for curriculum overload now. So, this is an opportunity for all of us to step back and see across the grades, are we teaching them right set of things? Is this what they need to be successful in life? And, what is essential? What should school focus on? And what should they leave out? This is really a big opportunity for us to reconsider many of these aspects, as both of you have alluded. So let me pick up a couple of quick questions from the long list that we have here for you. I will just say at the outset that that some of the questions posed by the participants, I'm sure, will get answered through the day as other experts come online during the track. Let me pick a few over here to get quick comments from Ashish and Rukmini. So Rukmini, there's a question here which is saying that you pointed out about moving the discourse away from learning outcomes. You cannot do it. You've been the champion of it all these years. And now that we're beginning to convert. So what parameters then, if you're saying let's move the discourse away from learning outcomes, then what parameters should guide quality two-way engagement with students right now?
Yeah, I'm not saying move away from learning outcomes, but I think this learning outcome has become like this holy grail, and it always comes in big long lists, and it has to be mapped to kind of chapters, and it's taken on this whole life of its own. I think so. I'm certainly not saying move away from learning. I'm not saying move away from learning outcomes. I think refocus, and I will keep on saying that if you refocus on foundations, particularly for this year, you will gain a lot of ground later. Now, foundation for the grades 1 to 5 or 1 to 2 may be absolutely basic at reading, speaking, doing basic arithmetic. My foundation for the 5, 6, 7 may be being able to apply everything I know to solve a problem. But I think that this is the time to focus on learning that everybody can understand. If you look at the ASER tool, everybody in India can understand कि उसमें जो है ये तो बच्चों को होना चाहिए. I'm not moving away from learning outcome, but I'm saying don't couch that inside 1.1.10, 1.1.12. आप SDG को देखो. We are all supposedly education people. Ashish, I don't know about you. I have to look at my cheat sheet to say वो कौन सा SDG 1.4.3.2 में मैं कम करती हूँ. Basic reading, basic math सबको आनी चाहिए, सबको स्कूल जाना चाहिए. दुनिया भर के लोग उसको समझ सकते हैं. So loosen up, man. Get the basic things done. India needs a big win this year. We are not going to have the Olympics, but let us say on 15th of March 2021 कि हमने एक बड़ा big push किया और हमारे बहुत बच्चे उस push से पार हो गए. Let's do that. We are hung up about these damn board exams in March. Just say कि पूरी इंडिया ना पढ़ेगी next year in May. पूरे दुनिया में सबको छोटी-छोटी कहानी लेके दिखा दो कि सबको आ गया है. We need that. We need that learning not to be an outcome and a point. It needs to be a real thing. It needs to happen everywhere and everyone needs to participate. So I don't know who's asking me this question. We are, as you can see, even more gung-ho. But usko एक ऐसे boundary में मत रखो.
Excellent. And there's a related question, which is either one of you can pick, that, should we therefore prioritize life skills during this time as opposed to academic learning?
Ashish?
Go ahead, Rukmini, go ahead.
I think that there is, again, I really worry. मुझे किसी journalist ने phone किया था and she asked me, school बंद हो गया तो learning नहीं हो रही. So when I said whatever, she said, oh, so you mean 21st century skills? I don't mean any of those. I mean that, kids learn, as Ashish said, kids learn from life. They've learned a hell of a lot actually in these 3-4 months. I think things that we have seen, for example, in our work, getting kids to work as groups. I mean, today, if the fact that in 11,000 गांव में हमारे messages जा रहे हैं, two-way वापस आ रहा है, it's because those kids kind of had a little bit of a habit of working together without too much instruction from someone. So I think that is certainly a part of good pedagogy. It's a part of life. When बच्चे इतने मोहल्ले में खेलते हैं, they don't have an instructor telling them कि training ऐसे 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 खेलो. तो पूरा इंडिया क्रिकेट खेलना सीख जाता है अपने आप से. So I think that learning to work together as a group, learning to solve some problem, whether वो school का problem हो, घर का problem हो, these are things that children learn anyway. And I think that in this process of ensuring, and ensuring is probably the right word because our states like UP and Bihar have pretty low attendance even pre-COVID. But making sure that सब लोग school आए, school has to be an attractive place, उसमें बच्चों की भी हाथ हो सकती है. So I would say that rather than compartmentalize into life skill and this and that, I think that what we need to focus is have a goal that everybody is going to learn at least these basic things. My school is going to function. My midday meal is going to be tastier than before because nutritional aspect of this whole business is now even more important. And get everybody involved in doing that. And that is don't make it life skill. वो skill नहीं है, वो life है.
Thanks, Rukmini. Ashish, there's a question for you, which says that it's hear about learning happening outside school. Are we not building tech to support only school-based learning in the form of guided apps, etc.?
Of course, look, we learn all through life. So I don't think we need an app necessarily to learn about life. I think children at home at this point are learning a lot from their parents who are at home. I mean, if you look at something like orality, which doesn't get as much focus within the school system, parents don't talk much to their children. Often they talk down to their children. And, this must be a golden opportunity where the families are at home to have more conversation, for the kids to listen in to conversation. Of course, there's other stuff going on in terms of abuse and things like that in certain homes. So, I think that has happened for sure. And we need to capitalize on that going forward, as Rukmini was saying. I think if we involve the parents going forward, I think we can use this moment to sensitize the teachers as children are coming back to school, that they have gone through months of hardship. I think that would be a huge win. If teachers are just more sensitive to the kids, if they try to understand each kid's circumstance, their home environment, and feel a stronger connection with the child, I think that would be a huge victory out of this moment, because it's not that we need to, have a life skills class or something like that in foundational school. I think the fact that the teacher is more aware of the child and looks at the child more holistically, and the parent hopefully has a deeper connection with the child, will serve them well. I do agree that some of the apps are more focused on pure literacy and numeracy skills, although I think some of it is around storytelling and things like that, which teach you about life as well. As you are, learning and improving your old reading fluency, your reading comprehension, or what have you. So like Rukmini, I don't believe that we should move away. I think Asad has done a great job in providing, holding up a mirror to the system to see where we are, to the learning crisis in India. I think those metrics are still extremely important. Obviously, we'll first take care of children's safety and their well-being as they come back to school. We'll want to give comfort to the community and the parents. But eventually, if children don't read, they're going to be set back in life forever. So we can't abandon that goal, even as we get children back into school.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Rukmini. I am going away very positive and excited about making and scoring that big win that India needs out of this in March 2021. That's my goal. And I hope all of us walk away. And as we talk about not just Charcha, but Kharcha 2020, we also see that, what role each one of us will individually play in that Kharcha, whether it is monetary or it is our contribution in many other ways. Thank you so very much. And thank you for all the participation. Let me hand it over